Hi, science peeps. This is Miss CG coming to you from home. And as you guys are sitting at home doing your remote learning, I thought I'd make some videos to help you with the new science concepts that you're supposed to be learning about. Um, I'm going to pretend that this is just like we're in the classroom and I'm teaching you the benchmark lessons that we would normally do for a portion of our class. So, without further ado, we are learning today about tides. So your first activity today is figure one in your book. So if you take a look at this top picture, it says you can think of the earth as a ball surrounded by a layer of water shown here. Now the layer of water that surrounds the earth is not that thick. They're just showing you like this so you get a picture of that layer of water around earth. The force of gravity from the moon pulls on the earth, as we learned last week when we were looking at the moon phases. The water on the side of the earth facing the moon is pulled toward the moon more strongly than it is the rest of the earth. So that's why at different times of the month, as the moon goes around the earth, you'll see in the pictures this bulge, and it's because the moon's gravity is pulling on the waters of the earth. So down here, it says write in H where high tides occur and L where low tides occur. So as you could probably guess, where you see these big bulges, you'd be writing your H's for your high tides. And then here where the water isn't bulging, you'd be writing your L's for your low tides. What I want you to do is to pause my video and go back to your Google Classroom. And if you could click on this bottom video, it's only a 6-minute video. It's called Watching the Tides. And it's a very good video showing you two different kinds of tides that we're going to be learning about, spring tides and neap tides, and why they occur and how gravity from the moon is affecting those tides. So pause me, go to that video, and then come back when you're done. Okay, so now you're back to me. I hope you enjoyed that video. So these pictures here look similar to the pictures in the video. So now last week you learned about the phases of the moon, and when the moon is in this position between the sun and the earth, we have a new moon. Now something else is happening too. The pull of gravity, because here you see the sun, the moon, and the earth are all in a straight line. So we have a lot of gravity being pulled on the earth, and that's what's creating this bulge right here on this side and on the other side as well. So we have higher than normal high tides, and this is called a spring tide. So now as the moon goes around the earth, okay, we have the sun, the earth, and the moon at a 90-degree angle. So there's not as much of a pull on those tides. So this is called a neap tide. Now, as the moon continues to go around the earth, this is the full moon phase. And again, we have the sun, the earth, and the moon and a straight line. So that pull of gravity is really forceful again, just as it was when the moon was in this position, the new moon phase. So now what the book wants you to do is to predict and to write what you think would happen when the moon is in the third quarter phase, how the tides would look on Earth. So if we're following this pattern, fairly similar to the first quarter phase, the only difference is that the moon is up top here this time, okay? We're gonna have another neap tide. So again, the sun, the earth, and the moon are gonna be at 90-degree angles. And then the waters of the earth are gonna look similar to this, not as bulging quite as much as when the three are lined up. So down here on this picture, your moon is gonna be up here in the third quarter position, also called the half moon. And then your waters of the earth are going to have a similar drawing to this with the first quarter phase. Okay. And what kind of tide occurs? You guessed it, a neap tide. Okay, so our last question today, it says, what causes the tides? And this is a recurring theme all throughout our forces unit and now in our astronomy unit. And that big force that affects a lot of things that happen is gravity, the force of gravity. Okay, so that wraps up our workbook activities. If you could go back to your Google Classroom, number 2 on your activity list here is to watch the YouTube video Tides Crash Course Astronomy. That's right here. It's a really fun video, 9 minutes. After you watch that video, I want you to then go to the site titled Tides and Water Levels. It's right here, and it looks like this. It's from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And the activity is to read what you see here. And it looks like our animation went away for me for a second. I'm actually going to go back and click on that again to bring that up for you. So it'll look like this. So read the paragraph, take a look at the picture. I just want you to note that you see here where it's at the neap tide position, at spring tide, but see how it bulges that big up there at that neap tide position? So we saw in our first 6-minute video and in our workbook, it doesn't really bulge that much during the neap tide. So I don't want you to get confused with that. But that bulge is pretty accurate for the spring tide. So then after you watch and read this paragraph, I want you to go back to your Google Classroom and click on your assignment that's to be turned in today, Tides Q&A. And I have it up right here. It's only 5 questions. It's an individual practice assignment, but it's just a review of what we've been talking about and what you've been watching. Okay. The final thing for you to do today is to study for the astronomy quiz. That's going to be later on this week using your Quizlet right here. And then for fun, if you have some extra time today, an optional activity is if you're interested in astronomy, in space exploration, in engineering, a good article for you to read would be Welders Wanted. And it's an article about how they're hiring people to start constructing buildings, or even in theory on paper, writing concepts for buildings for our first colony on Mars. When will that happen? I don't know. I don't know if they know even, but they are thinking about it, building a colony on Mars. So this would be a really cool article for you guys to read. So that is all I have for you today. Again, message me through Google Classroom or send me an email if you have any questions about today's lesson. I hope that it explained a little more for you than if I had not done this video, and I'll continue doing these as we have a remote learning. CG out.